Welcome to this month's meeting of San Diego Media Pros. Like us on Facebook, get us on LinkedIn. Refer your friends. We are growing quite a bit, and what's cool about our growth is that we're not just growing in membership of people who are just like us. Because this industry is growing in so many different ways, we are gaining people who are involved in different aspects of production. And so we're getting a much broader membership, and that can only help us all get better in who we know and what we know. So tell your friends. Mike Kurtz, come up here. Mike Kurtz is going to ask you to do something good.
Hey, I'm Michael Kurtz. I've been working in this community.
That's where the microphones are.
Oh, okay. I've been working in the community for a number of years, several decades, and I've been active in different organizations. And you know, a lot of us in our careers reach a point where we've been rinsing and repeating, and you want something new and exciting to do. And last year I joined the San Diego County Sheriff's Department as a volunteer, photography and video. And it's really a lot of fun. And so what I'm here tonight to do is, if anybody is interested in volunteer work, they want something that's a little different, it's a lot of fun. I run the photography unit, which is 4 of us. I have 3 volunteers beside myself. We do all kinds of interesting stuff. This afternoon, the hardest part about working for law enforcement organizations is not to say, shoot. So today we recorded the sheriff, and I've been up in helicopters, I've been out on operations, we take pictures at graduations, retirements, promotions. We also do a lot of fun stuff. I've been in parades, like I say, up in helicopter. We're getting a new helicopter next month. I got to go do all the air-to-air. We do media events, and it's really a fun. It's not for everybody, but if you're looking for something that's unique, different, you have time, it's a great way to volunteer and give back to the community. Phil.
Do you get to pick your assignments?
I hand them out. I don't keep all the fun ones for myself. My guys are very excited. You know, it's like, okay, who can cover? The next parade is the St. Patrick's Day parade. So 2 of my guys are like fighting. Well, both you guys, one cover the front of the parade, one cover the back. The sheriff is there with a mounted patrol, motor officers, the color guard. One of the photographers went to the honor flag was passed from the sheriff's department to an American Airlines pilot who took the honor flag and flew it back to Dallas. I don't know if anybody has heard of that. And Rich went down to the airport, closed it off, brought in the color guard with the flags, and he got some great pictures handing the flag to the really unique photography opportunities. And we're right there in the midst of some cool stuff. Some dangerous stuff occasionally, but it's really a rush. So anybody who's interested, I've got more information. I can hand out my cards and all that sort of stuff.
Mike, be sure to get us a description, and we'll post it on the website.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing is, I just want to see a show of hands. How many have outstanding arrest warrants?
Can you fix those?
One's not outstanding. It's pretty good, but
Thank
it's not
you.
outstanding.
Yay!
Yay.
So this month's tips and tricks. When you're writing, tie whatever it is that you're writing to something personal within the viewer. I recently had a campaign of commercials where the client wanted to do a particular thing, wanted to say a particular thing, and he told me who his target audience was, and I sat him down and said, your target audience doesn't care about what you want to talk about. Your target audience wants to hear about this and this and this. And he said, you know what, you're right. And we did commercials, and he's very pleased with them, and more than pleased, his clients are pleased. Producing, if you can, add 1 crew member. You're moving my microphone.
You're blocking my shot. So we got to figure another place.
I'm just doing what I'm told.
Yeah.
There we go.
producing, when you can, add one crew member, because in my experience, no matter how many people you have on the crew, you're one person short. So have one crew member to do all the other things that you didn't foresee, like
I remember when
batteries.
I was doing a lot of studio production, I wanted to hire somebody just to turn the house lights on and off. That was like my nirvana position. I went, all you have to do all that, just turn the house lights on and off. 'Cause, anyway.
I would like to have somebody on the set to go and get all the things I forgot. AA batteries, SD cards, XLR cables. Directing. Yes?
You just sit there.
I'm really digging it.
There you go. Just stand, let it stand, let it stand.
Got a room full of professionals here.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we set it up for when he was sitting. And,
I touched the microphone and 19 people go, hey, what did...
What? You can't do that.
Directing, I'm a big fan of, as a director, learning about the technology so that I know what it can do for my directing. And one of those things is slow-mo. If you need a shot in slow-mo, shoot it in slow-mo. Don't slow-mo it in post because it looks so much worse. If you have to slow-mo something a lot, shoot it in with a really good slow-mo camera so that it slow-mos down, because I've seen some horrible slow-mo. Even with all the good tools we have, I've seen some horrible slow-mo in post. Camera. The only filters I want to use on a camera are filters that adjust exposure, like a neutral density filter or a sky filter or a polarizer. If I'm going to do color correction with a filter, I'm going to have much better capabilities to do that in post-production, because I can dial in a diffusion filter to the 1,000th in After Effects or Final Cut, whereas in my camera I have a diffusion 1, a diffusion 3, 2, 3, and 4. For a tip about grip, bounce into a bounce. If you are in a shadowy area and want a strong source of light, the thing that I've done is I've taken a bright shiny board or a reflector or a mirror board and put that out in the sunlight, sometimes 100 feet away, and reflected that to a white card, where that white card becomes your source of light. The challenge there is that you have to, if you're using the sun for your light, every time before you shoot, you have to trim it up and make sure it's hitting your bounce. But you can end up with a good source of light just by having a 1 by 1 foot mirror panel to bounce a hard source of light. Editing. For editing testimonials into a story, turn the picture off. Do it just with audio. Mike Tao refers to it as a radio edit. That way you're not at all focused on what the shots look like or why that framing is so horrible or the color correction. You're just focused on knitting the story together. And once the story's together, then you can go back and fix whatever problems you have. The thing that I've done, the mistake that I've made, is that I'll edit something together paying attention to the pictures, and it takes forever because I'm thinking about this problem and that problem, and then pretty soon I've ended up, when I get right down to the end of the story, I've cut out all the problem shots. And if I had not sweated those problem shots, it would have saved a ton of time, because I had cut them out already. Compression for TV. I do a lot of stuff. Somebody asked about compression, and I'm going to hit that in the coming months. But compression for TV. When I make local TV commercials, I actually use a service that distributes those commercials called Centaur. If you do television work, there's a number of different companies that do this. Some of those, like DigiSystems, will charge you $350 every time you send out a spot. Centaur charges you $20. Yes. And Centaur, what you're sending to Centaur is a high-quality H.264 at 30i, 2997. So what I do is I have and they have settings that they want it at. I made a compressor droplet. I can take a master file that was shot at 2398 and drop it on that, and it will convert it to 30p, and it looks beautiful on the TV. Sound. If only I knew the first thing about sound, I could talk to you intelligently, but I can't. I wonder if there's someone here who might be able to give us some tips and tricks on sound production. Ladies and gentlemen, today's presentation is going to be presented by Joe Godfrey, who is a composer and sound designer and teaches here at the Art Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Godfrey.
Thank you. So when we have these meetings, we ask for RSVPs. First of all, so we can figure out how much food to get. But Michael, there's a chair in the back if you want one, but you're welcome to stay there.
I'm already bored and I'm leaving.
Okay? Low pain threshold, doesn't it? So we got an RSVP of 32, and there's 32 people in this room, so that's pretty astonishing. But some of us didn't RSVP, and we're still here. So we set this up. The last, 45 minutes has been Joe Castano and Mike and me and Tom and the other Tom sort of wondering how to get audio from this room to that room and back again so that questions could be fielded. So that I'm pointing to, which you have no idea what I'm pointing to, is our overflow room. There's 27 chairs in there. And just on the odd shot that we had about like 50 people, that anybody that's ever heard of MCA showed up, we had room for them over there. But we thought that it would be better if we were all in the one room. And so why are we in a computer lab? Well, when I got the topic of prepping this meeting to talk about sound, the first idea I had is, I know what I want to talk about. I want to take a piece of film and score it in the style of Henry Mancini, and then score it in the style of Thomas Newman, and then score it in the style of John Williams, and then score it, and this would be so much fun for me to do. And like Mike's client, you should have told me, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to hear that. I don't think that would be that useful to you. So I thought, what would be useful to this group? So I came up with an idea. Hopefully I'm right about this. So our topic is audio post, but it isn't. Last year when we did this meeting, and we did it in a not in a lab, in a lecture room. Tom Zizzi and I talked about, with Robert Mason, talked about production sound, what things that you could do that a professional could help you with in your productions. This time I thought, what can you do on your own? With the tools you already have, what can you do to make your audio better? So that's the subject of my talk. So that's why we're in a computer lab, because I thought, I could just bring a presentation, bring a PowerPoint, talk through it, show you stuff, lots of pretty screenshots, play something once in a while, and, okay, fine. But wouldn't it be neat if you could all turn around and boot up the program and follow us through this thing and actually touch and, so I thought I'd sort of treat it almost like a class, So we're going to work with this. So how many of you are Mac users? And how many of you have GarageBand? Well, you all have GarageBand, okay? How many of you have played with GarageBand that are Mac users? Wow, a lot of hands didn't go up. Okay, good, because that was my tool of choice. I thought, let me show them what they can do in GarageBand. It's free, you already own it. You may never have opened it. You may have thought that that's what high school kids use to make horrendously, bad music, and you're right about that, but there's other things that it can do besides making horrendously bad music. So I got 5 topics. What can you do on your own too? Number one, fix problems with production audio. Number two, edit and augment library music. Number three, edit and augment sound effects. Number four, mixing and layback, watching your overall levels. And number five, this is sort of a bonus if we get to it. What can you do to prepare for a spotting session with a composer? If you are going to hire a composer, what can you do ahead of time that A, will put the composer on the right track, and B, will save you money and time, because the composer won't be wandering around trying to thread your needle. You know, you will have already tried some things and can narrow the focus for the composer so they can sort of hit the ground running and get your job done. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. We teach in this audio program, which has about 160 students working on bachelor's and audio and associate's degrees in audio production. We use Pro Tools and Logic. The Pro Tools has been around about 25 years. It was designed as an audio recording software. It was designed to capture performances, and it does a pretty good job of that. In our recording studio across the street, when we bring in a solo artist or a string quartet or a 18-piece jazz band or a string section or a mariachi band or whatever it is, we use Pro Tools to capture their performance. So the really good news I have for you is that at the NAMM show in January, about a month ago, Pro Tools announced that it's bringing back their free version. They had a free version until about 2006 or so, and then they made you buy it, and now they're bringing back the free version. It's not, I wouldn't call it stripped down, but it's a limited edition. It will do 16 audio tracks, 16 auxes, and I think you get 16 plugins. So it's kind of a starter kit for Pro Tools. But if you're interested in using the tools that professionals use, then you know that will be available. There's this big show coming up in Las Vegas in April, you know, and we think that they want to have it ready for NAB. So what's that, a month and a week away? So that's when I would look for it. They're also bringing out Pro Tools 12, and what they're doing with Pro Tools 12 is moving everything to the cloud. Sound familiar? All right. So they're following Adobe's lead, and you'll do your project here, you'll put it on the cloud, you'll go home, you'll cloud it down and work on it again. And so, you know, none of us really that heard this went, oh, it's the answer to my prayer, right? I mean, it's like, I don't need that. You know, just because you can do it doesn't mean I need it, right? So we've all been FTPing stuff for a long time, and that works just fine, thanks. And I don't really get why they think we're all going to drink this Kool-Aid, but that's sort of the Avid way, is you will drink a Kool-Aid. So that's Pro Tools free. The other you could score a movie with Pro Tools. There are tools inside Pro Tools. If you add enough plugins to it, you could sit there and be the timpani and the piano and the strings and all the instruments and watch your movie and score it. It's MIDI, musical instrument digital interface, the thing that turns a null keyboard, a dumb keyboard, into all those instruments. MIDI is not fun to do in Pro Tools. It's not very good. Are there any like super Pro Tools devotees here that I'm like blasphemy? Good, okay. It can do it, but it's not really good at it. What it's good at is capturing a performance. The other program we teach is Logic, and that's made by Apple. It used to be made by Germans in a company called eMagic. In about 2007, Apple bought them. And that was the happiest day of my life, because I knew then that it would continue on and it wouldn't be discontinued like the 3 previous programs that I had spent time learning were all cut off. And one was, I had a Synclavier, and then I had Studio Vision, and then I tried a little program that I didn't like, and then I found Logic, and that was great. So Logic is the program you want, in my opinion, if you want to sit down and score a movie by yourself, be the strings, be the timpani, be the piano, be the reversed cymbal, be the, for sound design and authentic replication of sampled instruments, and then like all the wacky stuff you can do once it's in the keyboard. So that to me is the tool you want if you're really doing the score by yourself. You can flip, right? You can capture a performance in Logic, and you can score a movie in Pro Tools, but that's not really what they're strong at. They're really strong for what I said.
Do those systems talk to each other in any way?
Well, the session documents don't talk to one another. You can do what's called an OMF and export out of one and open it in another. There is a sort of a common language that they speak, but generally what you want to do is export audio, reference audio, from one to the other. I'm not crazy about the whole OMF thing, but generally, I mean, in my world, I pick my tool ahead of time. I decide it's going to be this or it's going to be that, and then I work with it. So, yeah.
GarageBand works with Logic. Does it work with Pro Tools?
GarageBand is sort of the starter kit for Logic, I would say, and GarageBand works with Pro Tools to the extent that you export audio out and then you open it up in Pro Tools. So, I mean, you can do stuff in GarageBand that you can then finish in Pro Tools, or an audio professional could finish in Pro Tools. So, yeah, none of these programs is sort of an island. I mean, they all interact a little bit, but generally you pick the one you want and you ride that through to the end of the project. So here's the scenario.
Let's start with an easy one. This is mismatched levels. So someone recorded a voiceover at this level, and your next edit is a completely different type of voice. Someone who's maybe older, after a hard day's work, tired. Your levels don't match. What do you do?
Okay. So you got a completely different type of texture, for the voice on this one, right? One person was nice and energetic, and the other person is, what they said is important, but your level doesn't match. It doesn't match intensity, but you're never going to be able to fix that. You're never going to be able to get intensity out of that second person. But what you must do is make sure that the levels match. And how do you do that? Because your ear will trick you, right? Your ear thinks that the second person, you want to turn up the second person because you want to make them excited, right? But you sort of have to resist the temptation to do that because you might blow out your levels. So what's the trick for this? Editors, you already know, but yes. What's the trick? Oh, was that a hand? Oh, I thought I saw a hand. The trick is use your meters because your ears will lie to you. So you watch the level.
Let's start with an easy one. This is mismatched levels. So someone recorded a voiceover at this level, and your next edit is a completely different type of voice.
So see the
Someone
difference
who's
between
maybe older,
the
after
fingers,
a hard
right?
day's work, tired. Your levels.
We use the volume from this one as the starting point for that one. And that way, even though you can't change the intensity of this of the second person, you can at least make them as loud as the first person. But no louder, right? You really don't want to make them louder than they should be. So use the meters, right? In Final Cut, they're kind of over there, and from here, they're down here, and so in whatever your NLE of choice is, you'll have meters. And that's why they're there, to help you solve tricky problems like this. So, has anybody encountered this one?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I would imagine so, right?
Oh, do I go into this STP meeting files?
Okay. Are we,
Still digging down through the file structure. to find it.
Okay.
I think you may have just found it. Is this what I'm looking for?
It's probably open, you double click it,
Yeah.
it's taking a moment.
Yes.
Does it help to shut down a left channel or a right channel to check the sync for the continuity?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, so question is, does it help to pan
Level?
for sync? Are you talking about like camera sync versus second system audio?
Yeah.
That's my favorite way to do it. Put the camera audio over here and put the second system audio over here, like left and right. Pan this one full left, pan the other one full right, and then listen. You'll hear that one's first. All right? Close your eyes if you have to. But that one's first. And then move that one back a little bit, and then pretty soon they'll be in sync. When there's a little bit of flamming, you know, what's that? Well, flamming is, I could probably do it with this. I'll do it with this. So I just made another track. I'm going to option drag this down here, and I'm going to option drag this down here, and offset it slightly. GarageBand doesn't like to copy very much. And then I'm going to offset this slightly, like just a smidgen, right?
Let's start with an easy one.
That's too much. Okay, that's a big smidgen. If you hold down Control, you can nudge these. Right now, I think, nope, snapping is off. It just doesn't want to let me move this.
Is that a function of whether it's to time or to events?
It will be if snapping were on. It will snap to a beat or let me just put it as close as I can.
Let's start with an easy one. This is mismatched levels.
If you hear that, it's not in sync yet.
Mr. Roboto.
It's very close. It's very close, but it's not in sync. You can tell from the waveforms too. Now, if you go back far enough to pluralize, yes?
Yeah.
Anybody use that? All right? Pluralize would look at the waveforms and go, get over there, all right? And fix it for you. Final Cut is pretty great now. Final Cut will just sort of do this, you know? You feed it the audio and it looks at those waveforms and goes, get over there.
Premiere does the same thing.
Premiere does that. So that problem is sort of solved now. But here's the issue. If you pan them,
Let's start with an easy one. This is mismatched level.
right, it's pretty easy to hear. There's no sound coming out of this. That's because of this. We don't need that. We need this. It's pretty easy to hear. Nothing.
Wow, that's matched up.
I like that. Silence is golden.
The lights that were on the speakers are now out, so I think you powered them down.
Swell.
This level and your next
Wow.
mismatched
Did it shut down from the ground fault?
I have no idea.
This level.
They were on, now they went off. They're off?
They came on and they went off again.
Very out front. You got a weak link there.
Oh, you know what I got? The switch is hitting the pole. That should affect it.
At least your computer didn't do it. There we go.
Let's start with an easy one. This is
All right? And so you listen and figure out which one is early, and that's how you put them in sync. Does that help? Okay, so that's mismatched levels. The simple answer is use the meters. Figure out where the last one ended. That's where the next one wants to start. Yeah, these sliders are the volume control. The meter is the little green thing that pops up
Let's start with an easy one.
when there's audio playing.
Okay, Right, we don't
Right.
have audio coming out of ours, so we're not gonna see that.
Well, I didn't figure that anybody would actually have the good audio. I just figured that you can see a lot and learn from that, right? So we're not supposed to hear it. Well, you can hear it, but hearing it is not critical.
Right.
Okay? If you notice, I have tags across the top for my topics. That would be really handy if you were editing a movie and wanted to put scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, right? So all you have to do to get those is say arrangement.
This is mismatch.
Yeah, you told us. You hit arrangement, hit this little plus, it puts something out there at the end of your last marker. It's because high school kids aren't using these to write songs. It uses intro, verse, chorus, bridge, and outro, but you can rename it to scene 1, scene 2, whatever you like. And then once you've made it, we'll just call it outro. You can trim it. There's an out trimmer. You can make it as short or as long as you like. And then when you hit the next one, it will put it at the beginning of the one before. Pretty handy, right? And those are saved with your session, so makes it pretty easy to line things up.
And that's to do what again?
It's to keep track of your scenes, right?
Okay.
Now, this is our friend across the top. This is not what you get when you make a new session in GarageBand. You get that by clicking on this clock and saying time, right? And it gives you SMPTE time. Notice it gives you 0 up front, not 01, right? If you want 01, you can type it, but it will take you to a bar very deep in the project. Take you, actually to 1 hour into the project. There's no offset in GarageBand, so you just sort of have to do the offset in your head. I don't think it's adjustable in GarageBand. There are not the same settings as you have, but I think what it will do, we can test this later. If you bring a 2997 in, I think it will see that. I think so. Yeah, I think it's smart enough to do that. If you bring a 2398 in, I think it'll adjust. Yeah, even though you can't actually set it. Okay, let's go to EQ Controls Analyzer. So I'm zooming in by command and right arrow, right? Zooming in, zooming out, command and the arrows. So we want to look at the controls. So that's this knob up here. So select this track, EQ Controls, and then select this knob so we get this window. And I'll bring this window up a little bit so you can see it. Now, this word in the left-hand corner, that's our friend. Because if we're trying to match EQs, like from one speaker to another in dialogue,
Matched level. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
okay, so there's a certain equalization that region, that recording has. If we do analyzer and play it,
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N.
you can sort of see where the peaks happen. And if you're trying to match, trying to contour someone's voice, maybe it's the same person, right? You brought them in for one read. James goes through this all the time. You brought them in for one read. A month later, they're back, different mic, different studio, but that's the only day you could do it. Mike's been there. And now we have to match their sound, and it should be really easy, right? Same talent, but it's a month later, it's a different mic, it's a different engineer, it's a different, right? So the analyzer will help you determine where the peaks and valleys are in the previous performance, and so then you can do some equalization until one looks like the other, and that's about as good as you're going to get it. Yes?
Is there a feature similar to that in Pro Tools?
Yes. There's a plugin called PAZ Analyzer, and it's, I won't say it's brainless, but you know, it's pretty much, you make a print and then you do that. Now in the new Final Cut, there's a match EQ, right? So Mike probably uses that way more than I do. You want to say anything about that?
I find that most of the automatic stuff in Final Cut 10 doesn't really work that well.
Okay.
So
All
I
right.
usually just go in and try to manually dial things in.
Yeah.
With a channel EQ.
Okay.
I'm trying to make them.
Now, does anybody want me to explain what this is, or are you comfortable just knowing that there's little waves on it? Quick explanation? Okay. What we're looking at is the sound range from the lowest sound we can hear, 20 cycles, to the highest sound we can hear, 20,000 cycles. Okay, so human speech is going to be sort of in this area where we saw it. If I had a music box that played a little tune, it would sort of be up more on this side. If I had a low rumble of an explosion, it would tend to peak down in here somewhere, and there's hardly any up there at all. Right? So top and bottom, we call it. Highs and lows, we call it. Treble and bass, we call it. You know, they're all roughly synonymous. High frequencies, piccolo's up here, tuba's down there. You know, it's high frequencies and low frequencies. So what these tools across the top do, they look like sort of ancient Indian icons or something, but what they allow us to do is to create peaks like shelves. We can shelf an EQ and boost everything below a certain number, or cut everything below a certain number. Okay? So if you need to bring up the bottom, chances are with dialogue, it's that. You want to roll off that sort of low rumbly sound that you hear. Oh, sorry. Okay. Chances are with dialogue, you want to kind of roll off the bottom stuff. It's usually not friendly down there, but you don't want to go too far. You could say, well, gee, I'll be really aggressive here and roll all this out. Now you're starting to thin out the voice. So you just have to listen and see what sounds good. Okay. So that's one type of EQ. There are just peaks that you can put in. Mike showed this at his editing seminar, where you sort of sweep along the music, sweep along the dialogue, and you find the spot that's kind of the offending spot, and then you go like that, and you cut it out. Right? You sort of find it by sweeping up here, you're boosting, and once you found it, then you just drop down and pull it out.
What kind of offending sounds are we talking about?
Well, it could be a hum in the sound. It could be a sort of a room tone that has kind of a certain echo. That's kind of, I think, mostly what we're talking about.
Sometimes harshness on an S.
Sometimes sibilance,
Sibilance,
sure.
we would
Could
use
be,
that for sibilance.
yeah. Could be the opposite too, plosives, right? Could be a really bad, right, that came in the mic. And you could find it and dip it out. I like editing Ps myself. You know, I like to find them and snip them out, because the plosive part, if you zoom in, is not very big. You know, and you can just sort of take the middle of the P out of there and make it a happy P. You know.
But that's a good, so this is what you would use for sibilance then.
You could use this for sibilance, yeah.
I had no idea GarageBand had so much functionality.
Oh, Tom, I owe you that was my whole point. Tom said I had no idea GarageBand could do stuff like this, and that I feel vindicated now, because that's a tool I chose because I thought that a lot of you thought that this is what high school kids used to make dreadful music, and it didn't have tools like this in it. So I feel great. So now we haven't even scratched the surface. There's more that it can do. Yeah.
Okay, this is maybe a really terrible question.
Oh, there's no terrible questions.
I could never afford to do that amount of editing on what we do. I mean, we'll go in and we'll find, like, if there's something that's egregious, we'll get rid of it, but, we leave, since I do most of the voiceovers, about 99% of them, we don't edit out the bass, which is what you were suggesting a little bit, maybe to make it a little livelier or something like that.
Well, I'll give you reasons to edit out the bass. If it's naked, if it's by itself,
Uh-huh.
and there's a kind of a rumbliness to it, that's not something you really want.
Well, of course, I don't know that we have a rumbliness to it, but I'm
Okay.
just talking about, like, a lot of this seems like, wow, through all the Ps? I mean, I do half an hour of voiceover a day for our stuff.
Okay,
That's a lot of work.
yeah?
Yeah, but
Well,
you're a pro
the-
and you are working on the same gear. What happens when you're out in the field all the time?
Doing the interviews.
You're doing interviews, people are not pros, it's not the same situation.
True. The
Uh,
best
that's-
way the fastest way to do post is not to have anything to fix in post. Right? If you get it right on the set, then this is gonna be really easy for you. You know, and maybe you don't have a lot of doctoring to do. But I'm guessing that there are people that
Oh,
do
yeah,
it,
when
you know.
when I interview
Yeah.
people, there are times
Yeah.
when they hit it, or there's,
Right.
you know, all that stuff, but those are very rare.
And I swear, every interview I've ever edited with a lav, at some point, the person goes, oh, it was the craziest thing I ever saw, right? And it's like, don't think of a pink elephant, you know? When you put that lav up there, they're gonna hit it, you know? It's just, you know, just try and get them to stop, yeah.
If you edit out pieces, that's gonna mess up your timing or your audio sync or
Well,
something against picture.
it might, except you're gonna edit in Pro Tools, we edit in slip mode, so we're not changing the timing. If you edit and snug everything up, if you do help me out here, I used to teach editing, a ripple edit, then, you know, yeah, it will slide everything up and your sync is gone.
But otherwise you'll leave a gap that'll also be noticeable.
A gap, yeah, which, we're talking almost like a millisecond here.
Oh, okay.
We're not talking about a lot.
Okay.
And you can sort of crossfade the first one to the second one and probably never notice it. So, the other thing I like to do, and I teach students how to do this, is to find a good P somewhere in the, you know, and isolate that and make that a clip. And then stick it in your bin, and whenever you find a bad P,
Whenever you take a pee, just grab it.
replace it with the good P. So, we have happy Ps, good Ps, and bad Ps.
Can you participate in this version of GarageBand?
Yeah, I think I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I think that's coming, yeah. Other questions? Okay, so,
PC version.
all right. Let me check my notes here for a second. Okay. The analyzer, yeah.
Does the analyzer accomplish anything, or does it just?
It gives you information.
Okay.
It tells you sort of where to put the next, what to apply. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, we find a setting, right? We say, okay, it's that and a little bit of that. That's our setting. Go to setting and save as, right? And we'll call this, you know, right? And you can apply that EQ setting, and then when you bring the next voiceover in, you go over there and let's just save it because I can. And then when you go over here, you can bring it in. It shows up right there. Okay, here are the standard factory EQs, and then there's the ones that you've made. So on a rainy day, you could go through and make a low pass and make a little bit of a boost or something. Don't waste your time. Everything you need is right here. EQ tools. There you go.
No P's in it.
There are no P's in there. But make darker, make warmer. I mean, it's in English, for God's sake, right? They're not speaking audio here. It's, you know, hum killer, right? I mean, we love GarageBand. It's in English, you know? It's good.
Remove air conditioner.
Yeah. Right. Phone filter notch.
Where's the replacement?
You need to make somebody you recorded in the studio sound like they're on a phone. Bam, there it is. So you can apply these EQ settings to where did you find this menu? Okay, so the way we found this is it's just sitting there in the track like that. We hit controls so that we can see controls. There's controls like this, and then there's EQ like that. And then once you get there, you have this menu. There's your EQ tools, and you now are a pretty accomplished audio engineer. You have a lot of stuff there that, you know.
And then you go back to your PC and do what?
And if you're not good at this, then you go back to your PC and you wish you had GarageBand. That's what you do. You know, I don't have a tool for PC people. I'm sorry, but a lot of hands went up when I said Mac. So I'm hoping.
Can you tweak these once you?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I go to improve thin sound, and then I say save as Phil's Pool EQ. And then it's there next to Happy P. My improve is still just like it was, but I do have my choice there.
Once you save it, are you able to go back to it and readjust it
Sure.
then?
And save it again.
Save-
Mhm. Although saving doesn't cost anything, there's no tax, so save away, right? Save number 1, save number 2, save number 3, yeah.
Joe, for PC, Audacity has a ton of these tools.
Okay.
It's free software.
Okay. Take your word for it.
It does.
Okay. Remember, Pro Tools, in about a month, Pro Tools free. So,
Will there be a Pro Tools for PC or just for Mac?
Pro Tools is for PC. Pro Tools is cross-platform now, and it will stay cross-platform. So the free one will work on PC too. Okay, geez, I'm way behind. Okay.
I get stuck in SoundForge. This is a fairly common scenario. It's someone being interviewed. The microphone level is not quite hot enough, and what we wind up with is too much background noise in the signal. So there's a common misconception that if we apply audio compression to this audio file, that it will somehow make the voice stand out from the background noise. It actually makes it worse. So let's examine this and find out why.
So compression is that. Compression takes the highs, the loud stuff, and the soft stuff, and puts the stuff closer together, right? So if you have stuff that's soft, and you want to make it even softer, compression is the wrong way to go because it's actually going to make it louder relative to the thing that you like. So the common misconception is that, oh boy, you should compress that, right? And that will actually probably make it worse. Here's the same track compressed.
This is a fairly common scenario. It's someone being interviewed. The microphone level is not quite hot enough, and what we wind up with is too much background noise in the signal.
So it's almost sucked the life out of the announcer, you know, it's brought his level down. And every time there's a pause in the voiceover, the background sound goes, my turn, right? And jumps in there and fills up the gap. Because that's what compressor does. It tries to even out the highs and the lows. So don't make that mistake. Don't run for the compressor to solve your problem. Now what will help get rid of background noise? Well, I like the method of let's not get it there in the first place, right? That's number one. Okay, number two is the best tool for this is Isotope RX.
What about Audition where you can...
Audition is okay, and I have an Audition sample here. Audition is okay, and an Isotope RX is better. It's just...
What's Isotope RX?
It's a program that you plug, and it's a plugin that works with Logic, with Pro Tools, with, I think it'll even work with GarageBand, and it'll actually work with Final Cut and Premiere too.
What about like a notch filter?
Well, a notch filter won't work on background sound unless it's a hum. Because a notch, right, what's a notch in carpentry? It's like a little, and that's what it is in filtering too. It's shaped like, like that, right? It's meant to just take out a certain frequency. It's meant to be very surgical and go in and pull out one frequency. But that is not just one frequency. It's a range of frequencies, right? And so it's really not going to work on that unless you put a bunch of notch filters in and
Then you're gonna risk your.
well, that's called a comb filter, and that makes it sound really bizarre.
Right.
So, yeah, you won't like it, so don't waste time doing it. So, what we can do now is, and Adobe will do this, is first way is not to have it there in the first place. Second way is isotope RX, and third way is get some room tone of that. Right? If you can't move your interview from this room, get that. Get a half a minute of it. I mean, don't just get 3 seconds, but get a good sample of it. And then go to Audition or RX and say, whenever you see that, pull it out. Right? And it will do it. The software is very good now at doing that. 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, BS, that'll never happen. And it's such a common problem that everybody needs that somebody went out and invented it and made it do it. So we used to try and do that with the tools in Pro Tools. We would like invert the signal. We had a signal going this way, and then we'd invert it and throw it out of phase, and so it would technically cancel it. But it's sort of almost worked, but it wasn't reliable. But the software where it is now is pretty good. There's even another program that I didn't bring to talk about that's even better than Isotope RX, but it's pretty expensive. Isotope RX out the door is like $250, I think. And I don't know, compared to going back and reshooting, it's nothing. So.
And they put the noise reduction stuff in the less expensive version now too. It used to be only $1,000.
Yeah.
But it's now like $300.
Yeah. So what Mike's saying is there's an RX and an RX Advanced. And the RX is pretty good. Has a lot of good stuff in it. You don't need to spend the extra money unless you're sitting and doing audio post all day long. It would be crazy enough to do that. Yeah.
What about the trick Mike Tao showed us where you use EQ and you find the room tone? And then
Well, that's what we were talking about with the sweep,
Okay.
right? You find the sweet spot and then you
just pull that one.
pull it down. Yeah.
But that's not really for getting rid of like background noise. That's more for getting rid of like a room of residents.
Yeah.
But it's not going to work for background noise because that background noise, like Joe was saying, that's not one frequency. That's a big chunk of frequency.
But if you've shot a project in Hillcrest with that horrible old 100-year-old electrical grid they have up there, and got a 60 cycle hum in your signal, a notch filter is killer for that, right? Because it's a predictable, repetitive frequency, and notch filters go, that's me, right? And it'll dive right on that 60 hertz cycle and pull it right out of there. So yeah, that's the ideal tool for that.
Yeah, Audacity has a very versatile noise reduction, and Audacity is actually free, and it's available on Mac and PC. So it's cross-platform.
Audacity has noise reduction?
It does, and it's very good.
Somebody explained the business model to me of making a really good software and then giving it away.
Make up for volume.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike.
They want you to buy the Pro version.
Because yeah. Well, I mean, what? I don't get that. Why?
Well, that's what Pro Tools is about to do.
Yeah, but they have an upgrade. It's like they're a crack dealer and they're giving you the first hit for free. They want you to buy the. Audacity doesn't have an upgrade.
Really?
No.
It is what it is.
Audacity is
But they make it up in volume. So. Okay. Yeah. Oh, all right.
I do that sometimes.
So, no compression, okay? Promise me. What's this mean? This means, okay, that's fine.
Well, do you want to talk about what you might do if you have that quality of audio? Somebody says you need to clean that up a little bit, and It's not compression, what is it? You got room noise. What's,
Well, as I said, RX4 is pretty good at taking an isolated, what you really need is the isolated room tone. And if you have enough of that, you can feed it into the signal that's corrupted and say, whenever you find that, get rid of it. Audition has it, and Isotope has it. Final Cut has,
It actually does pretty damn good
Okay.
at getting rid of background noise. It's got a background noise removal switch, and then you can just basically turn it on, and then it dial in the amount that you're gonna give it. And like any noise reduction, if you get to a certain point, it kind of makes your talent sound like you're underwater. But it does a pretty damn good job.
okay. There is one thing I should mention in Final Cut, and you're going to do whatever your workflow tells you to do, but there is a setting when you ingest footage that you can tell it to find and correct audio problems, right? It's a box you check, and it basically says, we'll handle this. We're not going to tell you what we're doing, but don't worry, it's going to be great, right? I'm not sure I love that. Yeah, and Mike's...
All of those automatic things when you're importing footage into Final Cut 10, turn them off, because all of those things you can do at a later point
Yeah.
if you need to.
with much more control.
Yeah, and it usually chooses the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's our advice, is don't let Final Cut auto-massage your audio. Import it with all its warts and everything, and then work on it later. Because you'll actually learn more in working on, coming up with the settings yourself than you will in just running it through the Final Cut grinder and seeing what you get.
Yeah, and the more problems you have up front, the better cameraman, audio person you'll be in the end. Because you'll want to shoot it right so you don't have to fix it.
True, all true. So, ambience. Okay, on this track, and you guys have all these tracks there if you want to sort of follow along and see, what's what. I'm on ambience controls, save a setting. So I went to this track, and controls is on, and rather than the EQ page, I'm looking at the controls page. Well, there's nothing really there, right? But there's stuff here, and this is pretty cool. So this is telling you if your plugins triangle isn't open, and yours is because I opened it, but you may just see that, right? You may open, when you get to the controls page of a different track, you might just see that. You want to open that plugins triangle so that you can see what is being processed and in what order. Because this matters, right? Is the de-esser in front of the EQ? Is the compressor behind the EQ? These are in some order here. So if it's black and white, it's not active. If it's blue, is it that or the other way around? I can't remember. Yeah, you turn them on with the little power switch here, right? Like that. And you turn them off again with the little power switch. Now, if you want to be bold, dare to be bold. If you want to be bold, click on the settings in the middle. I'm going to sit down so you can see. Yeah, so there's this switch, the settings, and then there's this which we'll get to in a second. So if you click on that, you get some settings that you can play with. So suppression frequencies, and now if that scares you, notice that they gave you presets like they did with the EQs, right? If you want to, a hi-hat is a musical thing, but there are de-essers in here that are decent. Pretty good de-essers. If you have sort of a Sylvester the Cat kind of announcer, that has a really heavy S. I have a dear friend that his H's are funny. H. I don't know. He does a really hard H, and so sometimes we have to kind of soften his H. Yeah, or maybe an
Pirates are a problem.
So, okay, so there's that. Here's what a compressor does. Right? It has threshold, ratio, attack, and gain. So if you think about this, here, I'm from Ohio. We get to use our hands. So So here's the top level and here's the bottom level, and we're gonna compress it like this. Well, we've made the average volume be a little lower by doing that. So we use what's called makeup gain. So we smush it, and then we raise everybody, right? And get the level back that we had. Because this guy was loud, he was up in there, and now we've smushed him down, and now he's not as loud as he was. These guys came up, but that guy's not as loud, so we push them all back up to where they were. That's called makeup gain. We make up the difference. And that's what that is. Sorry? That's the bottom one. Yeah.
So how much makeup paint do you use, or you just gotta?
Well, you use as much as you need to get back to where you
So
were.
then watch your meter.
And for that, you watch the meter, right? You see where it was, and then you get it back there.
I'm always afraid when I'm doing stuff like that I'm gonna induce noise or distortion or something like that.
You really can't, can I say this that emphatically? I think I can. You
voice stand out from the background.
Yeah, I like that. You can't, you're not going to introduce distortion unless you take it, two things. Unless you take any individual track into the red, right? If you stay in the -6 dB neighborhood, and you don't really have meters here, but you do in Final Cut and Premiere. You have numbers on your meters. You don't here, but you do that. So if you stay away from that on any individual track, you're going to be fine. Then you have to watch your master. We're not there yet. But you could have a situation where every single track is fine, but then when you add them all together, you're blown through the roof, right? So that you have to watch too. So there's two things to watch, but you're not going to kill it just by
turn the master down a little bit at that point?
No, you don't just turn the master down. No.
Why not?
Because you're making a softer copy of your distorted track.
Okay.
All right? No. When the master peaks, you leave the master alone and you bring all the other guys down. The guys that are going into the master. Yeah, I've seen that. So, I had a student, not here, but at another college, that shall remain nameless. And he came back with just a horrendous piece of production sound. And I said, didn't we cover all this in class? And what you were going to do if it sounded like this in the headphones? He said, yeah, but I was nervous. I forgot it. And he said, I kept turning it up and it sounded so bad. I just turned it down and took off the headphones. And I went, well, that solved it, didn't it? Right? That's called the ostrich method, and we don't use that. So.
Can you explain the compressor threshold?
It's how much, when, if we were compressing this mythical thing up here, it's where the compressor hits. Like how high does it have to get before the compressor acts on it?
So that's when it like activates it.
Yes.
So if I have peaks at -3, I might want to put my threshold at -5.
Yeah. I love a compressor with lights, and I always make about 3 or 4 lights light up and I'm happy, you know. That's my really stupid system for doing it, but it always works, you know. A compressor has about 8 lights on it, and if you take it to just under halfway, it usually sounds pretty good. So I don't really like the numbers, and this is pretty rare to see numbers. Usually you're going to see
Audition as well.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Normally you're going to see, I'll show you one if we have time. Normally you're going to see a graphic interface, and you're going to see meters moving, and you'll bring your threshold down, and you'll see that you're, it's very aggressive and not so aggressive, and you can just sort of see it working. The numbers, I'm not that big a fan of the numbers. Yeah, both numbers.
Although in Premiere you can listen to playback and watch your audio meters while you apply the compression.
Right. So this is really kind of weird, right? We have EQ, a compressor, and then we're EQing the output of the compressor. Okay. And that's like EQ on top of EQ. Be careful with EQ, because every time you add EQ, you're changing the phase relationship of the sound a little bit, and you can overdo it. And phase just means sort of clarity and accuracy. So don't overdo it with EQ. Try and have as much as you need, but no more than you need. Then you can apply master echo and master reverb on any one of these. So this helps because in Mike's demo at UCSD, he talked about one of my favorite tricks where you record people, maybe it's the same person, but let's just say it's two different people. You record them in two different rooms, and you're very conscious of the room tone, the difference between one and the other. So the solution, one solution for that, is to put them both in a common space. Create a little reverb, a short reverb, a tight reverb, but rather than emphasize what they have different about them, now you're making something in common. And you don't need a lot of that, right? It's just like a half a teaspoon of chili powder kind of thing. You know, you just need a little bit, and you will de-emphasize the room tone that each of them has by emphasizing the common room tone that you've now put them in. Has anybody tried that? I know Mike's tried it a bunch. Anybody else? It's a good one. It works. If you have no other option, that's a good one. Okay, so that's that track. All right. So now we're down to track. Controls, setting, channel EQ, EQ tools. So I think setting. Oh, I think I already showed you this, but I wanted to show you that you have this and all these choices. So in the EQ, if you don't feel like playing with these parameters all day, just choose one and see if that gets you close. The adjectives are very good. They'll help you.
Joe, before you're done, could you go through the importing and exporting of audio?
Sure. So let's do that now. So file. It's even easier in GarageBand. You find some audio somewhere, like this WAV file, and you drag it to GarageBand. That little plus means I will make a track for it. You can put it on an existing track. If it's audio, it'll go on an existing track. But down here, where it's gray, it'll just make a new audio track for it. I think I'm using I made this with my new version of GarageBand, and I think it's a little fussy because this is an older version of GarageBand, and it's sort of freaking out about it. But that's how easy it is to import audio. You just drag and drop.
What if you're doing a piece of video? How do you manage that?
Okay.
Do you have to export it first? In AIF or something?
Yeah, that's the universal AIFF.
Movie, open movie. Right? Then it goes to the movies folder in your user level, right? It goes to the user level and your movies folder. That's where it thinks it wants movies. But you just navigate away from that and go to where you want. So let me get back to that in a second. Master track. A master track is something that you create up here. Do you want an explanation on master track? Or yeah, okay. So you could have lots and lots of tracks in your session. Eventually, they're all going to be added together and shoved out the output. You need to monitor the level of adding all those together and shoving them out the output. It's being monitored whether you're looking at it or not. There's a master track whether you're looking at it or not. They're being added together and measured. It's best if you look at it. So in this particular session, where nothing is happening simultaneously, there's that track and then that track and then that track and then that track and then that track, right? Our master track would reflect that track and then that track and then that track. But that's pretty rare, right? Normally, we have dialogue, music, and sound effects happening over one another, on top of one another. And you have to monitor the output of that for two reasons. You could get it too loud, and you could get it too soft. So where you want it is sometimes where your client will tell you, right? My client will tell me, well, it's not a question of dialogue against music here. I mean, that's a different argument, but this is a question of overall volume. Sometimes, I mean, who are the people that do a lot of posting here? Do you push it right to 0, or do you do a -3?
Depends on where I'm going with it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, a lot of times if you're doing broadcast stuff, you'll get specs from the broadcasters where they want that audio.
Mhm.
But I've also found if I'm doing stuff for film festivals, I push that crap all the way to 0. Because if not, you're going to be the quietest
Because you know the other
guy-
guy's pushing it.
the quietest guy in the theater.
Uh-huh.
Or stuff for YouTube, you know, or
Yeah.
Vimeo. Just as long as you don't beep, you're fine.
Yep. There you go. There's your answer.
Well, the digital usage, because everything's being broadcast digitally now, all the stations came back hard about levels not being over like -8.
Right.
So I turned everything down, and
Yeah.
so I'm always worried about how loud my track sounds next to another spot.
Yeah, the Calm Act, you know, it has its own specifications. If you're doing ads, you have to sort of obey by that. You can get that on the Library of Congress, and it has specifications for how many seconds at certain volumes and stuff. And so, but generally, you don't want it too loud, you don't want it too soft, you do want Goldilocks, you want it just right. And -6 to -3 is usually where I try and land for average levels, and then, you know, never ever, not even once, don't even think about it, do you want it to go to 0 or above 0. It'll go to 0 on the last note, you know, when the cymbal crashes and the timpani hits and you know, everybody's in, that can go to 0. But generally -3, -6 is pretty good. So, all right.
Is that master track always at the bottom of the
It's
file?
never at the bottom. You have to create it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I'm showing you that it's there, because no one ever creates it, and you should, right? You should. And that's funny, because on a mixer, you've all seen mixers, and on a mixer, the master track is always on the right, you know, it's always over there. It's never in the middle, and it's never on the left. But you can't even like pick up this track and move it. You can move this one, move that one. Whoop, doesn't like that. You can move this one, you can move everything, but you can't move the master. It says, I'm staying over here, that's where I belong. That's what you have. Okay. I did mention this SMPTE up here. Okay, let's close this session. I spent way more time on that one than I wanted to. Don't save. Let's, I think I'm just going to, let's do library music. So there's a session called library music. I think I got a message from somebody. Okay. So, I want to show you some of the things that you can do with library music here. First of all, let's find it. Okay? See this little loop over here? Oh. Hit the letter O. If you open that session, hit the letter O and it will index the loops. That's because of the install in this lab. They put the loop library in the wrong place and it has to reindex every time. It will only have to do this once on your system. And it takes about twice as long as this. So maybe I can get around this. Yeah. So the way you can remember where to find the loops is that it looks like the loop at Magic Mountain. That's one way to remember. Or you can just remember loops, right? It has a lot of O's. So type the letter O, and up pops this library. So you can see that I whittled it down. I've gone to jingles and cinematic. And when I do that, I get, it's going to tell me, 400 or something loops. Should be over about now. There. It took away my selection, didn't it? So, jingles, cinematic. 24 items. These are full. So these are full tracks, you know? It's like buying a library. And you got it with GarageBand and you may not even know that it's there. Okay? These are royalty free, expense free, everything free. You don't have to file a contract on it. You don't have to tell anybody you used it. Yes?
The only problem with it is everybody else also has it for
Yes,
free.
right. That is the problem. And I have a solution for that too. But,
Force everybody else out of business, so you're the only one?
well, that's a solution, but that's not what my solution, that's your solution. So, that is the problem, is that everybody else has them, and you do hear them over and over again in tracks. But, seeing as how you have, if I take off cinematic, you have 375 jingles. And by the way, you know, to me a jingle is da 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 da. I mean, you know, a jingle is like a really bad radio ad. These aren't. This is library music, so they're not really jingles. So, oh, I hear exploring. Okay, so have at it. They're in there. They're in there for you to use.
But you can change them too.
Yes, you can.
Put them in there and do your own little change to it.
So here's what I've got. I've got adrenaline here. Okay, what if we want to just start on that little drum dealy here, right? I'm holding down the control key, so I have control over the cursor, and I'm just going to trim off the beginning. Right? So make the library music do what you want it to do, you know? The thing we love about library music is it's predictable, but you know, the peaks always happen in the wrong place, and it's 3 seconds too short, and you know, it's all that stuff, right? We've all been through that. So I want to show you how to determine the tempo of a piece of music. So this may be a little bit too much like music school, but let's give it a shot. So I'm going to start right on that downbeat, okay? I just trimmed off the little shh at the beginning. Now I need to move that to the beginning, right, to bar 1. So it starts. Okay, so I have two bars of musical phrase here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. That little spot right there is the downbeat of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3. It's not the downbeat of 3 according to this timeline, right? So I adjust the tempo here so that if I go, let's say 123, wrong direction, right? It moved bar 3 further. So if I go 116, no, actually, it was 126, maybe more, right? 128, maybe call it 129.
Won't the metadata in the song file tell you beats per minute?
It might, but I'm showing you how to do it mathematically, so you'll never get it wrong, okay? And now, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what good is that, right? We've determined the tempo of it. So the metadata might get it right. But now we can, in our loops, reset, make a new track. Let's do that kind of a track. And bring in beats. And no matter what its native tempo is over here, let's say I like I need to put I don't want that kind of a track. I want this kind of a track. I want an audio track. And then I'm going to get rid of that one. And so now I can put like a 2-bar intro in front of that. Or I can just bring in the drums right there with it, but softer, right? And put them right in sync. Okay, so the metadata will tell this to obey that tempo. Even though its native tempo is something else, it will conform to the session tempo. And all the other loops, all the other 17,000 loops in there will do that too. They'll all conform to your tempo. So I know I did that kind of fast, but if you're used to editing music, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3. I would do 2 bars, not 1 bar, because it's a little more accurate to do a 2-bar phrase. You know, you'll get it right more often than not. But if we did that right, we should be able to jump to bar 21, 21, and play. And it's right on a downbeat. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are music editing that much. Yeah, when you have to, right? Okay, so that's what I thought. What else did I have here? Oh, I know what. Oh, okay. So, Marty said, what if I take this library music and I embellish it? I don't think what did you say? Change it, modify it, okay? I made a little piano track here, right? Or actually, it's not a piano track. If I do Command K, I get a little keyboard. And I can trigger this with my QWERTY keyboard. Right? It's just a little patch that I found over here in this library. And now, all I'm hitting is one key, right? And it plays a little arpeggiated figure. So I could go here now and record. That's the old patch. Here's the new one. You know, I can put my own little fills inside of the track, and you know, those are shitty, so don't do shitty fills. But I'm under the gun here, so I'm under pressure. So, you know, but you can modify, right? You can modify the track to, so you can chop it up, you know, shorten it, add to it musically. What else can you do?
Could you plug in an extra MIDI keyboard and control it with that?
Yeah, well, Luke's saying, could I plug in a MIDI keyboard and instead of playing it on here? Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I figured my mission here was to help you use the tools you already have, so you don't have to buy a MIDI keyboard. But if you got one, yeah, I would for sure use that over this. But that's how much you can do.
Take anything special to get the MIDI keyboard in the system?
No, GarageBand is awesome. When you plug it in USB, it'll say, I found your keyboard. I mean, it always does. It's very good about that. So I'm going to mute this track. And now I have, right? I just have a little string patch here. Right? And I found that over here. Strings, Cinema strings. Right? Here's your library of sounds that you're going to trigger. Oh, Phil found the choir. Here's sounds you're going to trigger with your keyboard. So I'm going to put a little, I'm going to mute this guy and put a little introduction on our news theme here, just like this. Right, and we can automate the fade in of that, so it just sort of leads you into the library music, you know? I mean, I did it without a MIDI keyboard, with just the tools in GarageBand. So, you know, which kind of leads me to, what can you do to prepare for a composer, you know? And I'll just do this, not with a session, but just talking through it. A composer wants to know what's going to work and what's not going to work, but a composer, we all know there's lots of things that work and lots of things that don't work, right? And the composer wants to be on your team and read your mind, and I want to submit the idea that makes you happy, right? It's not about me being thrilled so much. It's like, what do you want, you know? What are you gonna be happy with that I'm not gonna have to keep doing this job over and over again, you know? Because no one wants that. You don't want it, I don't want it. So what you can do is experiment in here, right? Do you want high chords? Do you want, you know, I can switch octaves here, and maybe you want, that's too high. Right? Maybe you're sort of hearing that kind of a sound before this little, you know, before the track, or maybe you're hearing more of a drone. That's too low, dude. Right? Maybe you can move around the octaves and try things, right? And experiment and say, you know, for this scene, I really think it ought to be this low thing. I tried this out, and I'm really feeling good about where this is. Or you say, whatever you do, don't make it this low thing, because I tried this out and I hate it, right? So help the composer, like, start scratching stuff off the list, you know? Because the composer sits down, their blank page is this keyboard, and you know, they got to start somewhere. And knowing that you've tried this and this and this, and like it, and that and that and that, and hate it, helps a whole lot, right? So you can do stuff with rhythm. You can say, you know, when I edited this, I sort of had this rhythm in my head, you know? And so maybe you even make a track, right? You find a tempo and you drag a beat into the timeline, and you experiment with tempos, and you sort of find a temp track that works, and then, you know, share that with the composer, right? And now the composer's not on step 1, the composer's on step 22 or something. You know, it's a little further down the road than at the very beginning. You know, I don't think you're inhibiting the composer's creativity by doing that. I think most composers would sort of welcome the push, you know, in the right direction. One of the really hard things is to just sit down and start writing, and you know, it's maybe one of the hardest things in this business is to come up with underscore music for a director, you know. So you know, on the other hand, I've worked with clients, mostly ad clients, that say, okay, for this 3 seconds, I want the opening from the trailer of so-and-so, and then I want you to segue into the thing, and now I'm like, I don't know what I am, but I go back home and I think, this thing has all been laid out for me. I'm happy because I know exactly what I want to do, but geez, this is going to be a boring job. I mean, I'm going to take this and then do it, and then I'm going to take that and do it, and at what point do I get some creativity, you know? So, I mean, I wouldn't like, you know, hamstring the composer, but a little push in the right direction is probably a good thing. And GarageBand will let you do that. So, questions?
Is Finale still a viable tool for the Mac interface as far as
Printing music?
Yeah.
Yeah, Finale is good, Sibelius is good. One of them is owned by Pro Tools, Avid. I think it's Sibelius that Avid bought. And Logic will print parts. Logic's awesome at printing parts. I don't think GarageBand will print parts, but Logic has a whole thing that it's amazing. So in that case, what we do is a MIDI mock-up of a score. I mean, no director's going to go to the scoring stage at Paramount or Culver City and with a 120-piece orchestra and say, oh, I don't think I care for this, right? I mean, the composer has done MIDI mock-ups, you know, even Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer is a brilliant MIDI mock-up player. So he'll mock up the entire score using a keyboard and get some buy-in from the director, and then they go to the studio and have fun and record it. Or maybe they go to Prague or Belgium or, you know, wherever they go. But it's foolish to do it, to go on a live scoring date without hearing the music, you know. It's foolish is a little strong. Dangerous is maybe a better word. Yeah.
How do you get the piano keyboard up?
Command K. Um,
10 minutes.
Joe?
Yes?
Another thought on helping prep the composer.
Yeah.
If you've already got a rough cut of the video, indicate where music changes might happen, what sort of transitions
Right.
are going to follow in the video.
Good point. So one last thing. Let's close this date and go to, don't save, and open scoring. Okay, so let's watch this. Oh, I need to see the movie. View movie. I think I can do it if I do that. Okay. So, I know I have motion graphic people in this room. I am so embarrassed. So, you know, there's 4 little things that happen, and they sort of deserve their own little thing. And so, how could you make the music be more integral with this? Well, if you built this to a tempo track, you know, like we think that the best solution would be no odd bars, right? Because if you want me to hit bam, 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 those 4 things, if you don't use a common tempo, then I might be at this tempo in one bar and then this other tempo, and so I've got like tempo changes that are weird, or maybe it's a bar of 7/8 because that bar of 4 didn't work out right, and so the ideal thing would be no weird bar and tempo changes, a common tempo all the way through. So if we do this and just find a beat, and let's do world. Okay, so there's this sort of weird little exotic world beat. I'll bring it to there and make sure that it's, you know, this is a really big movie, so we're going to just scale it down, right? Just grab it and scale it down. I need to make sure this is happening at the beginning. It's nowhere near the beginning. So it's only this long. So do I need to drag in another one behind it? No, just grab it and loop it out, right, until it's at the end of the movie. So, okay, we good so far? All right. So let's see how this works with timing. All right, so there's music happening and there's graphics happening, and they're just both happening. There's no interaction at all. The music doesn't capture the rhythm of the graphics. So I made this so I kind of know that the solution is 132. So watch what happens here. Because we have 4 bars of music. And then the first thing is, bam, 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 bam. So, you know, that makes it make sense, right? You know, so if you're building motion graphics, throw in some tempo, build it to that, and then tell the composer that's the magic number. 132 beats a minute makes everything line up, and you know. Now you don't like the composer, you could say that's for me to know and you to find out, right? But a good composer will find it, but you can save them a lot of trouble by telling them.
Get you back with the building.
Yeah, tell them what the tempo is that works, right? So that's the point. You want the composer to have the freedom to take that 132 beats a minute and do whatever he wants with it. Could be jazz, could be classical, could be exotic beats. But you've at least painted the structure for him, right? And made the math make sense. And then the creativity comes after that. So that's my trick for that. So, yeah. You could take your audio right to After Effects and build it there. So I don't think we've done how to export yet. Here's that. You have a session. There's no export audio here. It's not here and it's not anywhere. It's called share. You're just going to send your song to iTunes, right? I would not do the compressed versions here. I would just do the uncompressed AIFF version. All the way until you get to the final distribution. You know, where's it going, like Mike said. You know, then we start talking about how we can compress the audio. But don't work with uncompressed audio. Don't work with compressed audio in your workflow. All right, keep it uncompressed until you have to compress it. So do that, send it to iTunes, grab it from iTunes, drag it to After Effects or wherever you're going to build your graphics. So let me just check my notes real fast. Yeah, and a couple other things. Very quickly, I'm going to show you that, okay, I am going to cancel out of that. Very quickly, I'll show you that not only is there jingles, down here there's sound effects. There's 1,655 sound effects in GarageBand that you may not have known were there, right? And you can search by the various parameters, metadata, and find what you need and bring it to the track. And, you know, if you do a sound effects search, I don't know, we used to pay a lot of money to have people do sound effects searches. So, you know, if you can do your own sound effects search and save some money for yourself, that'd be great.
The new Pro Tools for inserting your own Foley work, that's going to be a great tool since it's completely free.
Although you can do it here, you can record into GarageBand and watch the movie at the same time. So, all right, I'm out of time. Thank you. I had a few other things, and I'm going to save them for the next one.
So one question?
Yeah.
So can you name a resource for learning more tricks and tips on GarageBand? Like, is there on Apple, or is there an Apple website, or do you have any?
More tips and tricks on GarageBand. You know, that's a good question, and I don't know.
They have new workshops they're adding now at Apple.
Okay. Okay.
So it might be-
I do know someone that makes Pro Tools training and is going to start in April making Pro Tools 12. That would be me. And it's going to be available on Infinite Skills. If you want to learn Pro Tools top to bottom, you can go there. I have Pro Tools 10 and 11 on there now, and 12 will be up sometime in June, I think. So, yeah.
I think you can get GarageBand tutorials at MacPro Video.
Yeah, Mac Pro Video.
And you can just download them, or lynda.com, you can
Yeah.
just download them,
Yeah.
what you need.
Linda has some pretty, it's probably Garo Green probably does the garage, I think he does it for lynda.com. So, yeah, he's a pretty good guy. He's pretty good. Yeah, so, thank you very much.
Yay! Well done, Bill. Well done. Next month's meeting is on getting and keeping clients and also on, is that right? Media buying. Getting and keeping clients and media buying. So it should be well attended because we all like money. Thank you all for coming out.